Another good performance at the weekend though for Liverpool, Tom. And you guys seem to have really bounced back well from the one game blip that everybody assumed was going to be the end of Slot, and you guys were going to fall apart. But you've done well again.
Hey, look, anyone's going to have a tough time playing at Nottingham Forest super team at the minute. Unbeaten in the league, one of the best defences in the league. It's a tough game at the best of times. Yeah. What can we do? I mean, that was a really good performance on Saturday. Again, all credit goes to the midfield. It's looking so good at the minute. Gravenberch, McAllister, Szoboszlai to a lesser extent, but he's doing a lot of much needed work. And Diaz is getting very close to an apology from me because we're actually starting to see the end product that I've been asking for 2 years. Like the first goal.
Is Nunes getting an apology?
Diaz has shown me consistent end product. It's not the greatest sign when my manager's in a press conference after the game going, I watched him shoot and went, why have you shot? It's not the greatest sign in the world of confidence in the striker. But on Diaz, the touch for the first goal, Kepa helps him out a bit because he's God knows where he is. But the touch and composure to bring that down on your thigh, take it round, then put it in the net, brilliant. Trent had a good game. I'm so happy with what we're doing. And the fact of the matter is, we have fixed, at the minute, one of the main problems we had last year. We are not in basketball matches every other week. We've conceded 1 goal this season in the league. And it was a screamer from Hudson-Odoi. We've got the lowest XG conceded in the league. I think, we did going into the game. I don't know what it is now. We just look so much more solid, and that in turn helps every other aspect of the game. We look less tired because we're not having to run ourselves ragged for 90 minutes. We look more controlled in the games, so we can afford to make different types of substitutions and rest different types of players. We actually are a better, arguably, in possession attacking team. Don't get me wrong, in transition, Klopp's football will probably always be superior. But we actually have some really nice moves and some really nice structure in our attacks. I mean, the third goal, I know it's a mad shot from Nunes, which goes in, but the entire move build up to it was really good. Slot's done a lot of good work with this squad, and people are now going to go with the Rodri news and that. Can Liverpool win the way into a title? You still need a lot of luck, but
surely
we're playing like title winners. We're playing like title challengers.
I still think it's too early to be saying Liverpool are title challengers. You've played 3 games at home. You've lost one of them. The other 2 games that you played away from home was Manchester United, who somehow you guys have a superiority over them.
This is what I don't like, Phil.
Also,
but this is what I don't like, Gal, because everyone going into that.
Across, and then you can respond, please.
No, but
please.
Tom, he has got a point.
It's 5 games into the season under Arne Slot. We've seen this with Tottenham. We see it with a lot of new managers when they come into a team with quality players. Teams take a while to figure how you play, figure out your weaknesses, and how they can exploit them. And once they do, you see points come off the board quite quickly. You haven't faced many tough teams yet, and also it's going to take a little bit of time for teams to figure you out. So, Tom, you can big up Gravenberch. He's been amazing, one of the most improved players in your team so far. Trent, Salah, all these guys, Luis Diaz, revelation under Slot. But I just don't think you're there yet to be saying after 5 games, you're back in the title race.
I never said I said you need a lot of luck to it. And secondly, the point that's got me a lot recently is going to Old Trafford before that United game. Everyone was saying this is Slot's first big test. This is Gravenberch's first big test. It's a real big test. We smashed it out the park, and everyone went, "Well, it was just United. Doesn't matter, does it? They're crap anyway. It's not really a test. When's your real test coming up?" Like we've shown.
Can I say something about that?
Big games, but we've got a bit of quality.
Sorry, Tom, didn't mean to interrupt there, but I want to say something on that. You actually struggled against us 3 times last season, and this is not me doing United props. It's factual. You struggled against us 3 times. You beat us 0 times in 3 attempts. We drew all 3 of them, and we won 1 of them in extra time because it was a cup. So you technically didn't beat us on 3 attempts.
You conceded 6 goals here.
Exactly. So to come here this season and say, "Oh, well, it's only United." Well, it was only United last season. If anything, I think United last season was worse. And you couldn't beat us. So I think it's very easy to dismiss that you just beat a United team that hasn't been good when he actually didn't do it in 3 attempts last season. Now, I want to add something real quick before I open up back to the panel. Unfortunately, the Liverpool game is the only one that I didn't watch. But hearing everyone talk about the Liverpool game, I could say there's one consistent thing so far this season is that every time you get a win, it sounds like there's different reasons, and I think that's a good thing. I feel like Arne Slot came in, and you haven't been a one-dimensional team. Even in the loss that you had, I heard a lot of Liverpool fans talking about the team when you lost last week. It looked like the club team. It looked like they were just doing the same instructions of old, and it didn't look like they were actually doing slot ball that you did in the first 3 games. And hearing the win that you had yesterday, or 2 days ago, whatever it is, it sounds like every time you have a different standout player. You're no longer reliant on just Mo Salah doing everything on his own. You're no longer reliant on Trent just having a world-class or a purple patch where he's just creating chances out of his ass. It sounds like every time you're dealing with the game one game at a time. And I think that's a very good characteristic of I'm not saying you're going to win a Premier League this season, but that's a very good characteristic of a title-winning team, because you can deal with occasions one at a time. You get what I'm saying? So I'm taking that as a very good positive thing of I'm a Liverpool fan.
I think one of the big things as well is that defensively, because we are much more solid, we don't need to score 3-4 goals
100%.
a game like we did last year, which was ultimately our downfall. Like against you, where we had loads of chances, missed them all, and then never ended up getting enough goals because we conceded 2 crap ones.
It's no longer
Keeping clean
shootouts.
sheets means you only need
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
Once again, you've played 5 games. Your defense,
But they haven't played. They haven't. Sorry, Igal.
Igal.
Can I just jump in a second, Igal? Can I? Because you've said I want to address your point. This 5 games thing. Yes, they have a new head coach, but I think we're absolutely disregarding such a key component of modern day football. The club isn't going for a rebuild. It's a new head coach taking over a squad that's already very good and a club that is typically run very well. Arsenal's rebuild is not built in the image of Mikel Arteta. It's built in the image of Arsenal. He's your head coach. Yes, he has a lot of input and say. Pep Guardiola doesn't run Manchester City Football Club. They have a club structure in place. He is the head coach of it. They will, unless they sign a bum, they are going to continue to be a very good team after Pep. Probably not as good because Pep's the greatest. But they're not just suddenly going to go from being, it's not going to be a case that they get a new manager and, we've got to see how they play. That for me is almost, that is the type of punditry that you would apply to clubs run in the Wenger and Fergie era and beyond, where the club was built in the identity of the manager, and you have to wait and see. Liverpool, they're going to have games where they lose. Of course they are. No one is saying that they're going to be invincible and they're going to be perfect. I still think the squad needs more work. But it's just a new head coach taking over from a very good head coach and a very good team that actually just needed, more than anything, a little bit of tweaking to its game. I don't think this is about 5 games. It's like Chelsea. A lot of people called me out for saying I think Chelsea are, at the very least, on their way to being back. Because it isn't just about the 5 games under Maresca. It's the improvements that were being made at the back end of last season. They haven't started their project again, Chelsea. They have just put a new head coach in. And this is why I say that I expect Chelsea to kind of be doing what they're doing now. In terms of they're going into the 3rd year of their rebuild. They know they've made mistakes. They've addressed those mistakes, both with the structure at the club, who's making football decisions, and the manager they've appointed that haven't been right. But there's still a progression. And I just think I'm still a little flabbergasted that we have so many football fans still that think managers run clubs still. They don't. They coach the first team. The club, most of our football clubs now, and I'm glad United are in this space, none of our clubs are run in a manager-centric way. The manager is essentially the head coach who coaches the first team to a degree, the way the club is telling them to do it with their own, like any of us as employees. All of us have a job, and you go in and you put your own style on what the company wants you to do. So I just don't think we can look at Liverpool and say we have to watch another 10, 15, 20 games before we can decide that they're a really good team. They will be in and around the title race this year, in my opinion. I don't think we need 20 or 30 games to test that theory. They're a team that has consistently challenged and consistently won trophies for the past 7 or 8 years. They brought in a new head coach. That they're not in a rebuild. Slight transitional period, maybe. But I don't think we should be treating them like a team that's rebuilding from scratch.
First of all, my whole point is not saying changing the manager is the reason why they're not going to win. I'm simply saying there's multiple different reasons, Terry. And I think you completely bypassed everything and put me in a chamber saying, because Klopp's not there, they're not going to be in a title challenge. No, they could well and truly be in a title challenge. I just think it's too early to be saying they're solidified going to be in that situation, because one, they haven't faced some of the best teams in the league. They've had an easier fixture list than some of the other teams so far. So I don't think that we've well and truly seen Liverpool be tested enough. Number one. Number two, Arne Slot's a new manager. It can be negative and it can also be a positive. There's such thing as a new manager bounce. When a new manager comes in, you can get a bounce in performance. You can get new systems, new styles, and that takes a little bit of time for your opponents in the league to figure you out. And when they do figure you out, that is when you're truly tested to see how you do bounce back from those situations. We've seen it with certain managers, like Ange. He won 10 games in a row last season and then got figured out and didn't have a good end to the season. We've had managers who didn't have good starts, like at Chelsea, but then eventually started to figure out in Poch near the end of the season. So there's different ways you can approach a season, but I don't think, Terry, there's one way of thinking, and I think you're entitled to your opinion, but I think that it's a little bit different.
And I understand that, and theoretically, none of us can be right. We're predicting whether they'll be in a title race or not, because essentially the title race, it depends how you view it. Some say the title race isn't until the last 10 games, but then you've got to build to be in that last 10 game period. So when does it actually start? The only thing I would challenge in your view there is, yes, there's new manager bounce, but that's typically for teams doing badly, because if you're already at the top, you don't have a bounce. You're already up there. And the clubs that you mentioned that had those kind of spikes were doing really poorly when those managers kind of came in, as an example. Liverpool last year, they had a bad season by Klopp standards, but a brilliant season compared to 99.9% of the rest of English football. They won a trophy. They were in the title race up until the last few months, as an example. They only really got knocked out of the Europa League because Atalanta were just amazing last year and beat, look at what they did to Bayern Leverkusen in the final. Nobody expected that. They were absolutely brilliant. They just got beat by a better team on the night, as an example. I do get your point, and I think it's an opinion whether or not. I just don't think we should treat them or view them through the framing like they're in Man United's situation, like they're even in Chelsea's situation, who are improving, like Tottenham's, where it's been awful for 5 years. If Arteta leaves this summer, say Arteta wins the league this year, and then he leaves and becomes a Real Madrid manager, and then you guys go and bring in another top manager to replace him, I won't sit there and be like, oh, it's going to take a year, got to give him a year to embed his system and he start. No, the expectations will be to win league titles straight away, because you're taking over a well-oiled machine.
But Terry, there's nothing wrong with saying you need a larger sample size to judge a team, and that's where
you're not wrong. But let me just add something before, because I know Terry probably wants to move on. Let me just add one more thing. Usually, we look at teams that are just this close to challenging, and we talk about what signings could they do in the summer to get them just over the line so they can become champions or just competitors. You've recently done, as an example, with Rice. Rice took you to the next level. You've become a more serious team. You look at the signing, you're like, oh, 100 mil for a midfielder. And fair enough, you did actually compete again, and you probably looked better. I don't think people think of that when it comes to managers. And that's where I want you to think about it. And I want people to think about it right now. We do it with players, but not managers. A manager could be the reason you actually go from just being there to being, all right, now I'm a serious team and a challenger. The reason no one thinks about Slot like that is because we all rate Klopp this high. But seriously, have a conversation with yourself and think about it. Is Klopp actually a better tactician than Arne Slot? Because I don't think he is. And I stood on that in the summer. And Terry, you can back me on this, because I said on Straight Facts, I said, I think Slot is going to come in and he's going to give him one element that they didn't have for 9 years, which is tactical flexibility. We're just saying this because we don't rate Slot on Klopp's level, because Klopp is a legend of the game. But when you really deep it, this tactical flexibility could be the reason Liverpool could go from just being about in the last 2 years to now being, you know what, we're serious because we took a next step and we're actually as serious as City, as Arsenal, when it comes to having a coach that can manage or coach the players to more than one style.
He's shown it as well this season. He's shown it against you lot. He pushed Gravenberch up to basically pin Casemiro into dodgy positions. Against Milan, he changed his entire pressing structure. So Trent wasn't on Leao and Canate was, so they couldn't get out. It's these little changes that we need to do.
I'm laughing because I got cooked last week for saying I thought City would beat Inter, and everyone told me that Inter are world class. They're a good team, by the way. Did they get beat yesterday by AC Milan at home?
Yeah, 2-1.
Yeah. Hold that, Mo.
It just made me laugh
And
because I
AC
got
Milan
so
are
much
dog
shit
shit.
for it. I know they are. It made me laugh. Yeah, I didn't. Do you know what? Yesterday was so crazy with the Premier League. I didn't check many other league results. I didn't watch anything else, and I just saw Mo ranting on my Twitter feed, and I was like, "Oh, I think they lost, didn't they? Oh, that's hilarious." Look, viewers, I'd love to get your views. Love to get your takes on Liverpool. How good do you think they are? Will they be in title races this season? Based on the early sample size. By the way, I don't think Igal's opinion is overly wrong. I think it's absolutely fair that you put it out there. But our job is to challenge each other on these shows. Make sure the like buttons are being smashed to over 6,000 people watching. I cannot thank you enough for your loyalty, your viewership, and everything else you guys do. You are, in my opinion, the best footballing community out there. You are. So thank you very much indeed. A few super chats before we go on to the next section. Tom, how many teams have played low block versus Liverpool?
For the whole game, only Forest. And the problem, yes, you can talk about that, but that was a case that if you watching that game, it was literally just a case of every single one of our key players had arguably their worst performance in a Liverpool shirt across the past 2 years. Yes, because the next game it didn't happen again, and the game afterwards it didn't happen again.
But did you face a low block in those two games?
Not a low block in the way that Forest did, but again, the mistakes that were being made in the Forest game were not because of the low block; they were individual errors.
Oh,
so we broke down the low block a couple of times against Forest, and then Trent would pass it out of play, or Szoboszlai would pass it out of play. That's not to do with the low block; that's to do with us being idiots.
Guys,
but the lack of quality chances is down to the low block. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, guys. Yeah.